How do you stay motivated knowing it can take years before you start speaking? How do you keep track of progress using ALG method? Do you think that shadowing creates interference? Should I be fluent before learning how to read? Do you think that some languages are more suited to ALG input learning than others? Don't you think that total immersion in real life would be nearer to the spirit of the ALG method than only input through videos or listening? Are there any strategies to avoid overthinking and analyzing? Do you think it is possible to learn with this method after having tried a traditional method for a few months? How do you deal with the plateau of stagnation at intermediate level? These and even more questions that you have left under the video interview with Marc. I will put a link here. If you didn't watch this video, I really recommend first go see that video and then come back here. My name is Inna and this is Comprehensible Russian channel. Check the description below this video. I will leave all the useful links about the ALG method and anything that you could need in your learning journey, like the ALG roadmap to natural Russian fluency in 3 versions for different categories of your native language, a quick start guide for ALG method, notes about how to choose the best CI content, and a prompt for crosstalk sessions with Russian tutors. By the way, since October this year, 2025, we started to release much more videos. Well, we're releasing videos every day. So if you subscribe for our premium, you will get new video every day, every single day. So that's going to be a lot of content. Also join our group and individual crosstalk and conversational live meetings. And now let's get to our conversation with Marc. Hi, Marc. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm okay.
Thank you very much for meeting again. Let's try to answer the questions of our viewers. Okay?
Okay.
Yeah, let's go. So the first question, Topple Dubio is asking, the immersion-only method feels like a one-dimensional approach. How do you stay involved and inspired? I, for example, change my learning path about every 3 months to stay inspired with new input or change of method.
Yeah, well, my inspiration, of course, when you're learning with this method, it's slow and sometimes you second guess yourself thinking, am I really learning or, will I ever be able to speak? But yeah, basically my inspiration came from, yeah, the small incremental gains that uh, you get from learning a phrase or a word that sounded so familiar to you for a long time. Sometimes you know the word, you know the sound, but you don't know what it means, and then all of a sudden, yeah, the meaning and understanding the word or phrase comes into your head. So something simple like uh, the phrase "let's go" or "do you understand?" Once these things become clear, like they pop into your mind, that's something that really inspires you because you know that the method worked, and suddenly you don't have to think about what something means. You just know it. So that's the thing that most inspires me or kept me going was, yeah, I got the knowledge.
Mhm. So I guess that's a very big difference with traditional learning, because in traditional learning, um, we get the answers immediately. We look up words, we're using translation, dictionaries, and we have this result immediately. And maybe it makes us move maybe a little bit faster, and we have a feeling that we're progressing. But at the same time, it this process lacks this feeling of, um, well, I don't know how to say that in English. When you are like waiting for something, excited, like, and sometimes you're even frustrated, like, oh my God, I've heard this word for so many times, but what does it mean? I still don't understand. And then suddenly, boom, and it clicks. You're like, oh my God, that's happiness.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's really true. That's and of course this happens over and over if you're listening, if you're studying with the ALG method, that of course there may be a first time or it happens early in your comprehension, gaining comprehension, but yeah, it repeats itself continually. Recently I was yeah, listening to some videos and uh, or had some online lessons, and I was understanding really truly 95% of what was being said. So I thought back to 6 months ago when I was watching your beginner videos, and yeah, of course I understood like 5%. So somehow in these last 6 months, uh, I was able to transition to be able to understand almost everything in a basic zero beginner video. So I still can't speak. I don't want to speak. But if I do need to say, a few words or a word, yeah, when I do it, people understand me completely, and there's no like uh, question about that. So yeah, that's my inspiration.
Okay, thank you. How do you keep track of progress?
Yeah, I started. When we were in AUA, we kept track of the progress because all the hours in the classroom were logged. Everybody knew, uh, just how many hours of listening they had, and Dr. Brown had a kind of a clearly defined roadmap, if you will. Um, that was a long time ago. Nowadays, it's not live. We're not like attending class at the same time every day. It's a little bit different, and your counter on your website, yeah, has been a big help when listening to the videos to see the progression of hours. Yeah, I make some notes and try to update, your total counter hours on your website. You can estimate, and really ha having the difference in understanding uh, is what like gives you an idea of just how far you're progressing rather than the exact hours. I
Mhm.
was never a good student, so uh, so yeah, yeah, keeping track of my progress really is just in my own mind and in my level of understanding.
Talking about the counter, input counter, and as you said, and I agree totally, that it's not only that you count the hours of input, which tells you about your progress, because you can compare to the roadmap, but also, as you just said, it's just watching how your understanding is growing. And for that, I don't know if I told you or not. On the new version of the website, we are going to have some control points where you can go listen to a control piece of content, native, made by natives, for natives, so that you can mark how well you understand. Let's say in the first 25 hours, then in the next 25 hours, And like every 25 or 50 hours, you make this little test, and then you can watch how you progress, how more and more you understand. So we will have
Yeah,
two ways of measuring progress soon.
yeah, that would be really helpful because, like I said, it's hard to keep track of the hours and I find notes all over the place about the hours I listened. So yeah,
Yeah.
something centralized like that would be a big help.
Mhm. Okay, let's move to another question. How do you deal with the plateau of stagnation at intermediate level?
Um, yeah, at intermediate level, I guess, yeah, when I was studying at AUA, there really wasn't a plateau because it was continuous. It was, uh, yeah, kind of a structured environment. And I never really felt like I was at a plateau. It's a little bit different now studying Russian because, I don't have the access to, um, yeah, a regular schedule and a regular interaction with native speakers. So, yeah, plateaus. Yeah, I have a lot of plateaus now. Uh, but, if I do hit a plateau, I just, you know, go back a step in the difficulty of the video or, ask my speaker to adjust their delivery. And yeah, then again, I can move forward by doing that.
hmm hmm So I think you're more talking about some difficulties um, in motivation or difficulties in understanding. And I think that the plateau of stagnation at intermediate level is a very widespread term to describe what happens to intermediate learners when, well, because when you're a beginner, you feel the progress and you have actually the progress quite mm, fast progress, like phew. And then at some point, this curve starts being slower. So the progression is slower, and you feel frustrated and demotivated. Mm. So you're saying that at AUA you were not experiencing this, and if you will experience this with Russian, what do you think you will do when you're at intermediate level? If it happens to you, of course.
Yeah, yeah, I understand the progression of, learning in this method. And uh, yeah, I guess I have felt some stagnation even at, beginner level. But yeah, it's all about self motivation. If you know you have made progress and you can see it, even though, when I get to an intermediate level, if I get there, I think I'll get there. I'm sure I'll deal with it the same way I dealt with it at my beginner level, which is
Mm,
just to kind of double down and, continue on.
interesting. Okay. Um, I think I will keep this question for my another Q&A session, and I will give my opinion as well later. Well, the video will be on the channel soon. Okay. Oh, Karamazov HCB is asking, people from ALG method often say that you shouldn't look things up and so on. But what about when you have like 1500 hours and you are already reading? Should I be fluent before learning how to read? What do you think, Mark? Did you learn
Yeah,
to read in Thai?
I did not learn to read, and for me, it was a conscious decision not to read. I knew right from the beginning that I wasn't going to be reading Thai newspapers.
Mhm.
Um, I knew that I wasn't going to be writing letters to people
Mhm.
in Thai. My whole goal was just to be able to communicate and, make my wishes known or understand what people were saying. So I didn't, you know, get to the point. I did look and study the alphabet a little bit just for reading, uh, street signs and things like that. Uh, and I was able to understand some basic uh, symbols from the alphabet. But yeah, my focus was really all about understanding conversation and being able to speak to people to do what I needed to do as I went through my day. Yeah, maybe some people might consider that not a very lofty goal, but for me, that's what I wanted, and I was able to achieve that. Um, and right now, I have the same goal for learning Russian. I just want to
Mm.
be able to communicate with somebody and be understood. Uh, yeah, or understand them when they're talking to me. So yeah, my level of what I want to achieve is just that. It's basic communication.
Okay. So just to answer the question, as you were not learning to read, I will give my opinion about reading. So before reading, I think you should be able to speak full, meaningful, improvised sentences, what we call natural speaking in ALG, even though I think that natural speaking starts much earlier than that. But just for the term, we decide that speaking is when you can communicate messages in full sentences. Then we say, I can really speak. But before that, I can output some fragments of speech. So when you're already speaking, I think that's a perfect time for starting to read. I will explain shortly. It's because I think reading is practically speaking, because when you read, you are pronouncing words the written words. You're pronouncing them even if not out loud, but in your head. So when you see a word, you're pronouncing it. And if you don't know how to pronounce this word, you have a risk to facilitate that, to facilitate that, is that right? Uh, this experience. So you can like lock a mistake in your brain if you read it wrong. So for that reason, it's better to already accumulate a lot of input, language input in your head, so that you know how to pronounce those words, that they can sound in your head. You know how they should be pronounced. And then when you see them written and you read it, you can pronounce it in the right way. That's why. And shadowing is good when it's done um, naturally. Like it happened to me with um, in Japanese and in French, both. I was shadowing, but I didn't know that I'm shadowing. I didn't know that term. I was just playing with sounds. I was playing with words. Um, I wanted to play with it, even mocking, really, like they do this or that, because it's fun, and I liked to do that. First, I was mimicking sounds, then I would mimic some words and phrases, um, and later sentences. But every time I was listening to something, especially repeatedly, that would be absolutely natural to repeat those phrases that I've heard many times. That would be really supernatural. Like, oh, I've heard this so many times. They say blah, 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 this, some phrase. Even if I don't know the meaning, I want to pronounce it because it's already here in my head. It's stuck. And now I can say it out loud. So that's for me is natural shadowing. But when you're doing shadowing as a deliberate practice, I don't see the point really. Like if you don't like natural approach and natural acquisition of a language, do whatever you want. But if but if you want the natural fluency in the end, I wouldn't recommend doing shadowing deliberately.
I just wanted to say I've heard the term shadowing, yeah, mentioned on your website or maybe in your uh, presentation about ALG. I wasn't really sure what shadowing meant. I'm glad you just explained it.
Yeah, well, shadowing exists in the language learning community more on the side of other methods. Um, it's a practice when you're listening to a video, let's say, and either pausing or not. Ah, no, I think they don't pause, but you're repeating almost simultaneously with the speech. Like you're listening, repeating, not pausing the video, even.
Hmm.
But there is only also another practice recently presented. I forgot how they call it now. It's kind of the same with like as shadowing, but you can pause. Um, no, you're actually taking a small piece of audio. You listen to it and repeat, and then you listen to it again, and you repeat it again. So you're repeating the same thing all over. But this, well, for me, first, I couldn't do it. Um, I would not be able even just because I hate practicing. Like it's tedious for me, like that. Mm,
Yeah, I have
and
something
I
to
don't,
say.
yeah, and I don't see the point, as I already explained. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. I have something to say about that. So, yeah, I understand the concept of shadowing. And for me, that it's too much like thinking about what I'm learning and thinking about anything other than just listening and absorbing the words and sounds. Um, yeah, I think that's something that, new new learners to the ALG method or the natural approach, it's important to, yeah, understand the concept like right from the very beginning that these things like trying to think about what's being said, it's yeah, it's not like a normal concept when you come to learning or someone's learning ability. In my experiences, the less I thought about anything, uh, the better I did in the process. So
Exactly.
yeah, I won't be
Hmm.
shadowing anytime soon.
Never. Yes, exactly. That's the mindset that any natural learner should develop. Is that first you should not focus on the language and on learning as a process. Like you should really try to get rid of the idea that you're learning. So for that
Hmm.
reason, you need to focus on some other goal. Like you're learning for what? Find your why I'm learning. Maybe I want to know something new, to learn something, or maybe it's fun for me, or maybe something, or maybe all at the same time.
Yeah, I would call it something like yeah, just have the experience of listening to what's being said without trying to concentrate on it, just letting it, uh, word by word, uh, either go past you or, yeah, get into your brain word by word. And, eventually meaning starts to come to those words that you hear over and over again. Yeah, it's really like a magical kind of thing that happens.
Mhm.
And I guess it could best be described as natural, right?
Right.
Learning naturally.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly. I think also, well, talking about the mindset, that we are so often looking at the learning process of any language, like it's something that we need to have results, that we're aiming to something, to this fluency. And we think, okay, I'm learning now, and then when I'm fluent, I will use the language. Whereas if we look at how kids do it, they never think about time in general. Like they don't have any idea that they will be fluent or not be fluent. They are using the language right now. So that's why I'm saying that you should refocus on some other goal, on how you actually are going to use this language. How are you going to play with it? Like a kid, it's playing from the very first moment. Like, okay, if you're hearing a new language for the first hours, the first thing you want to do is to play with sounds. Like, look at the Russian kid. He or she would do liba, 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 because he's already trying to make r, but that's a very hard sound. So but he will be playing for hours with this thing and with other sounds and with anything, but not because he's supposed to, but because that's a joyful process. Like we are not, I think a natural process, any natural process is just life, just like life. The main thing is in the process, not in the ending point. We are not aiming to the ending point, right? Or like music, or like a dancing. It's not the destination what is important, but it's the process. Like we are
Mhm.
not. Uh, if in music, for example, there would be the ending point which was important, then the best musician would be the one who is playing the fastest, right? Or or when you're dancing, the idea is not to reach some certain point on the floor. The same
No,
here. Well,
it's just happening. It's happening
mm-mm,
in real time.
exactly. So for me, this is the natural process. Any natural process has this kind of feeling that you need to enjoy it in the process. And when you will have this feeling with the language, that's a good sign that you're doing everything right. Okay, let's move to another question. Alexandra Lach, 8508. Do you think it is possible to learn with this method after having tried a traditional method for a few months? I began to learn Russian a few months ago with an app and some videos. I hope it is not too late to reverse the process because I learned vocabulary, a little grammar, and also spoke and wrote in a notebook. What do you think, Mark? Is it too late?
Yeah, I had the same exact experience in so much as when I decided I was going to or wanted to learn Russian, I I didn't know about the resources that were available, like your website or even YouTube presenters. I was just listening to, yeah, a repetition of vocabulary words on YouTube that yeah, happened to be spoken really clearly and distinctly. So, yeah, there were some hundreds of words without any explanation by the speaker. There was no translation or anything like that. So I listened to those words. I was spending a lot of time on the road driving, and yeah, I just listened to them repeatedly over and over. And then later, I did. Someone introduced me to uh, Duolingo, and I started listening to Duolingo. But after a couple of months, and it was helpful, but it wasn't really like the natural method because, uh, y you know how the app works. Uh, that's about the time when I found you and started following your videos and realized that, yeah, you were teaching with the ALG method. So I immediately deleted my Duolingo app. Um, but so in a sense, to answer your question, uh, I was doing some other things before I started, following the ALG method. And I don't think it made any difference, and it wasn't detrimental to me in any way. So, as far as the comment, I think that as long as you, yeah, stop doing the things that are, yeah, considered traditional, you could transition right into uh, ALG, natural learning.
Okay, thank you. It does not prevent you from progressing with ALG anyway. Like you can still start using the method and you will still progress, and um, this interference will be somehow lost in your brain. Maybe it will have a little bit of influence. I mean, if especially if you were heavily drilling, exercising, and doing this intensively for a long time, maybe yes. And especially it affects the accent. If you were speaking a lot, then you would lock in those false um, pronunciation, something like that. But if you were doing this for a little while, not too much, and so on, like, well, proportionally, um, but still you can, I think that natural acquisition still helps in any case. It will do better for you in any case.
Yeah,
The
I
second,
want to, yeah, I want to
sorry.
just comment briefly on, yeah, this idea that you're talking about. And, I was able to have this experience being around people who uh, had studied Thai in the traditional method, and some who were even studying with the natural approach at AUA, and continuing to study with the traditional method outside of the classroom.
Mm,
And the since I was, yeah, trying to adhere to the method, uh, Dr. Brown's method, I didn't do any of that. I didn't study outside. I didn't ask questions or look up words or anything like that. And it became really obvious to me, after some months, after some hundreds of hours, that my friends who were studying the traditional method, their pronunciation and their accents, yeah, were, in my opinion, deplorable. I knew what good Thai sounded like, and yeah, they were like off the path. And yeah, I knew them for some years after that as well. That we were friends, and yeah, they never recovered. They always had, uh, you know, I guess foreign spoke Thai with a foreign accent,
Mm,
and had poor pronunciation. Not that I was, you know, so skilled that uh, you know I could just hear what the language was supposed to sound like from my teachers and from the people living in Thailand. And yeah, my friends who did mix the two methods, it was decidedly different, a different sound. So yeah, it just reinforced, you know, uh,
mhm,
the path that I was following. That's all.
mhm. Yeah, I see. That's the same thing was being said by David Long in his interviews. The same thing.
Mhm.
Okay, next question. What do you think was your level of proficiency across the four skills? Listening, speaking, reading, and writing after 700 hours of study? And how did it uh, evolve later with immersion in the country?
Yeah. Um, when when I started my course at AUA, it was yeah, sometime during the first year of the program. Um, Reading and writing was not part of the the natural approach program at that time. The school did offer reading and writing, and some students were doing that separately of the ALG learning part, but I just stayed in the section of the school that um, followed the ALG progress. Um, my speaking and listening uh, or understanding ability were really effortless when I was at 700 hours. On the subject of everyday life, uh, I could speak spontaneously and follow the words of whoever was speaking to me without struggling about it. Um, so yeah, that was the extent of my proficiency. I didn't have the other skills, reading and writing. Uh, As I mentioned before, it was never important to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The progression of my understanding and speaking certainly evolved because I had such a good baseline of knowledge, vocabulary, and sentences that I could understand later on when things were spoken outside of that baseline, yeah, through context and yeah, just experience or watching somebody, uh, even facial expressions or actions, I was able to add on to the level of proficiency that I got in school. So it's it's just like yeah, a child's experience. In the beginning, they're proficient enough to tell their mom they're hungry or they don't want to go to bed. But as they get older, uh, yeah, they can say a lot more, and they weren't taught that. They just gained the knowledge through yeah life's interaction, and that's what happened to me too in the Thai with the Thai language. As time went by, as the years went by, uh, I expanded on my knowledge of understanding and speaking without studying, I might say.
That's great. And I thought about something while you were talking. I think the natural approach is giving us something else besides the language knowledge. It gives us, it teaches us soft skills like tolerating ambiguity. It teaches us soft skills like guessing and finding ways to understand and to extract meaning from the context, which
Hmm.
is so useful in real life. Because I can see sometimes um, foreigners learning Russian, like if they are stuck with a certain phrase and they don't understand it, they are really stuck. They will be looking at you, just re-asking and re-asking and not understanding and totally lost. But an ALG learner never does this. And this is very interesting. Like when I talk to ALG learners in Russian, sometimes I'm like, do you really understand everything I say? Because I know maybe, that the person is not that high level, doesn't have that high level. And the person can say, no, no, not everything, but I'm okay. I'm like, I'm following. And sometimes it just, the person is so calm and cool. I'm like, it's fine. And this mm, state of mind is very useful. Being calm on one hand, and on the other hand, when you have to, when you need to, you can find ways to understand what's happening.
I I I agree completely because yeah, that happens to me. People are speaking to me, whether it's you know an online lesson that I'm getting, or even in yeah everyday life, and I get that same question: Do you understand? And I too say it's not important, that I understand everything. I understand enough that uh, I can move forward. So it's hard to describe, but there's a certain relaxed state that you can get into that's not at all like uh, the traditional struggle, I'll call it,
Mhm.
that the the
Right.
traditional learners have.
Mm. How much of your learning would you attribute to the classes and how much to immersion in the country and living with a native speaker?
Yeah, I mean, the basis for my learning Thai language through the natural approach, yes, certainly is concentrated on the classes and those first about 700 hours that, that gave me the start to be able to be out in the community and so forth. Um, I certainly in the subsequent years that I spent in Thailand, I certainly expanded my vocabulary and expanded my ability to listen or communicate to people, to understand them uh, through everyday life. They were really two different kinds of progressions. The classroom listening, yeah, it was concentrated and repetitious, um, and again, it gave me a basis, a place to start. Later, when I was in the community, like spending time in a Thai village where no one spoke English, no one at all, um, and I would be with people for 8 or 10 hours a day, watching them uh, go through their life or talk about their neighbor or talk about doing their laundry or whatever it was. Um, yeah, that was another kind of progression that happened. Uh, it wouldn't be repetitious like it was in the classroom. They might talk about, what they were going to have for dinner, today, and then it would be something different the next day. But through all that, um, I definitely had a progression because I had the basis for, um, you know, the basis of understanding, right?
Mhm.
So, I would suggest if someone, were going to spend time in a Russian speaking environment, that if they, put in those early hours, uh, learning through ALG when they did end up in an environment where people were speaking Russian around them, it would make it a lot easier and they would progress just through the natural listening of people's everyday speaking.
Mhm. Mhm. If I may, I would add something from my own experience. Um, as you maybe know, I was exposed to French quite naturally, and so I acquired it to a certain level quite naturally, with the only thing that really, really stretched my timeline, my progress timeline, is the fact that French input that I got was very low comprehensible.
Hmm.
People did not care about me understanding or not. They were just communicating between themselves. And usually it would be, well, as you know, French people, they like to talk around the table. And around the table, not much things are happening. So people are talking about
Right.
something abstract, something that happened somewhere, sometime, and politics also. And so it was really incomprehensible French. But
Right.
still, even this incomprehensible French took me somewhere. So I think that if I would start with something that would be highly comprehensible for me, it would be easier later to to understand the real life adult
Yeah,
conversations.
I might add that in the classes at AUA, that's how it was. It was a concentrated, you know, the, the program was designed to have concentrated input, on basic things. Uh, you know, starting with basic greetings and, colors and, uh, you know, talking about walking or the home, all basic things. So it was very concentrated on that basic uh, level. And yeah, that gave everyone, myself included, when we did eventually end up in the community, it gave us, enough of a start that they weren't speaking about abstract things, in the
Right.
classroom. That's why, your videos are so important because you're concentrating on a certain subject that's understand the subject matter is understandable to the listener. So um, yeah, it's the difference between the repeating tenses in the traditional learning method or memorization. It's just two completely different things, and the end
Mhm.
result for comprehension and ease of speaking is, yeah, it's much higher in the natural or in the ALG approach.
Mhm. Mhm. So the next question is very close to what we just discussed. Don't you think total immersion, real life, would be nearer to the spirit of the ALG method than only input through videos or listening?
Well, You know, over time, yeah, I think it would be nearer, but um, the chances that someone is going to be able to be totally immersed and have enough time, a year or two, to learn through total immersion versus having some, you know, really comprehensible input through videos where someone is demonstrating or drawing on a whiteboard. It's two different levels of input. Um, I'm sure there are cases where people end up in a society, they don't speak the language, and they're there for some years. Uh, and yeah, eventually, like a child, they'll gain the knowledge and understanding of the language, but it's the time factor, the timeline of being able to comprehend what's going on, and the videos or listening to a speaker uh, on your website. Yeah, it concentrates it uh, and accelerates it. So yeah, I would choose you know the listening method over total immersion unless I didn't have any choice.
Especially in the beginning, right?
Yeah, absolutely. In the beginning,
Hmm.
it's when it's the most difficult.
Right. I think here the main problem with real life immersion is that no one is really taking care mm, of making you understand what's
No.
being said. People usually don't really care about it. So, unless you have someone who, even if you have a husband or a wife, and I know this, and you know this, it
Mhm.
actually never works between,
Mm-mm.
in the couple. For some reason, there are too many practical questions to solve right here, right now, fast. And you don't have time for speaking slowly and adapting your speech so that the other could understand. No, everything is super emotional and it's hard to to do that.
Yeah, I
So,
uh, you mentioned that. Yeah, I did spend time with a native speaker. My wife, actually, some many years, uh, and it was just like that. There wasn't ever any time for, some kind of concentrated uh, learning or anything like that. I just listened all I could, and uh, yeah, my wife did speak Thai all the time, and I used it by uh, yeah, watching what she was doing or the expression on her face. And yeah, through that, I was able to, yeah, gain a lot more language knowledge. But um, I guess, yeah, it was an everyday situation, a total immersion to a point. But yeah, it was very helpful that I knew how to pay attention, so to speak,
mm,
about what was being said.
mhm. Another difference, well, between an adult being immersed in a real life and a child is that, well, just naturally, adults are automatically behaving, um, taking care of the child. Well, because just as a human being, we are taking care of children, and
Right.
we really try our best, and it happens quite naturally that we change our speech. We don't speak about too abstract things to the child. We just speak about simple things happening here and now. Um, and that makes the kid immerse in a more ALG style, let's say,
Yeah, yeah.
way. But if you are, and as an adult, diving right in the real life of adults in this real life Russian environment, let's say, no one is going to take care of you. um, so that's the difference. But it doesn't mean that you cannot progress with immersion. It just means that you need this right kind of immersion, especially in the beginners and intermediate level. So, how are your meetings with ALG speakers are going? Because this is what you're looking for, right? When you take
Yeah.
lessons, a patient, caretaking, native speaker that can they can spend as much time as you want.
Yeah,
So, mhm.
I've been taking online lessons, listening to speakers for going on 6 months now, and um, yeah, it's you have to understand that the speaker doesn't really understand or know your comprehension level either, unless uh, they're asking, do you understand? So, a kind of relationship forms over time where there's understanding between the speaker and the listener, and what level uh, of comprehension is happening. So, yeah, sometimes I might tell someone who's speaking to me that yeah, maybe you could be a little more repetitious, or maybe we could go back over the lesson from 2 weeks ago. And over time, the understanding between the listener and the speaker, it becomes more clear. So um, yeah, right now I have a good understanding with the people I listen to. So uh, they don't have to ask me anymore, do you understand? They know that I'm understanding most, not everything, but most. And uh, you know, that's really what's important, that you have some basis, to
Mhm.
move forward.
Mm. I can confirm as a well, ALG, what I would not say teacher, whatever, guide, speaker.
Hmm.
When I have crosstalks with students, it takes time to understand the level of the student, but then you have this feeling just right away. It's like your kid. You know what this person already understands, what he doesn't understand, maybe even practically uh, about the words. Like I know if this person know this word or not.
Exactly.
Yeah, just like with your own kid, you know that the parents can understand their kids so easily, but a stranger can be like, "What was that? What's that word?" But you know. That's interesting. Like this very individual communication and content and relationship is quite important as well. So I really recommend everyone to take individual lessons as well. Not lessons, let's not call it lessons, but meetings, crosstalks, conversations, mm, to develop this relationship.
Yeah,
Yeah.
over a couple of months, I've had the same speakers speaking to me, and yeah, it does take a little time, but yeah, now we have a relationship. We have an understanding of the knowledge level and the approach, and uh, it's something that, yeah, it takes a little time to, form and get comfortable with.
Mhm.
But yeah, I'm there now.
Nice. Okay, let's go forward. It seems that certain metacognitive habits interfere with the natural way of learning. Are there any strategies to avoid overthinking or analyzing? Ooh.
Yeah. I
That's a
mean,
big one.
this idea of overthinking, it's yeah, it's something that yeah, I was fortunate when I started with ALG um, that was heavily emphasized about not trying to figure out uh, what was being said. I mean, it goes against our natural inclination. We want to understand, what's being said because we're listening.
Hmm.
But, in Dr. Brown's program, uh, the idea of not thinking, goes along with the other rules that he had. And they were, you're not allowed to ask any questions. You weren't allowed to take notes, have a paper and pencil in the classroom. Uh, you weren't, you were encouraged, not to try to study at all. And they gave no homework. So, it was as basic as it could be. Just listen and don't try to figure anything out. So that's a hard concept for a student to understand and get comfortable with, especially if well, certainly you're not a child anymore. So, uh, you know, everything or many things that we learn through life were through, being an inquisitive and asking questions and trying, the idea of the natural approach in ALG was don't try, you know,
Hmm.
just absorb it, just let the sounds go by you. And, eventually you'll start to understand what's going on. And that's really the way it worked. It's really the way it works still. Um, so, you know, I don't know. It's something that you have to experience before you can really get the feeling for it. It's like somebody telling you, yeah, you can ride that bicycle, but until you can ride that bicycle, uh, it's all a mystery about how to ride the bicycle. Once you ride it and know it, you never forget it. It's easy, right? And I guess that's like a basic analogy
Hmm. Hmm.
for
That's true.
learning.
Right. I agree. If I may add, especially when you were describing how to just let the language flow and you are just listening and so on. It reminds me a lot, actually, about a lot of spiritual practices, especially Oriental spiritual practices like meditation, or nowadays it's very trendy to call it mindfulness, and so on. So the basic practice is to let go control and
Uh-huh.
not think too much about anything, which is impossible. But even this, we accept it. We accept the fact that it's impossible not to think at all.
Hmm.
But still, we are kind of trying not to think about anything. And it's like several layers of letting the control. And
Yeah, no,
well, sorry.
yeah, that's okay. Yeah, no, I think that's like a perfect description. Let go, let go of everything and just you know, let the words come. And yeah, of course, watch the
And go.
actions or, yeah, let go and go. But it's a sounds like a simple way to approach it, but it's really, it's the correct way to go is
Mm.
letting everything go and just yeah listen.
Okay, thank you. Um, Are there any studies measuring the success of this method or the number of people who have benefited from it and the average time it has taken, not in input hours, but in lifetime, when it has been used, um, but in lifetime when it has been used out of a total immersion, real life. Tak, what? Did you understand?
Yeah,
Um,
I did understand, and I know that Dr. Brown and later David Long, did have a roadmap, a guide, uh, based on how many hours of listening and you know that track the progression. But yeah, it really depends on, in my opinion, it depends on the individual and, you know, how much they were thinking about it or not thinking about it. And, you know, how much time they spent listening and had experience in life. So I don't know, you know, I would just go by the general guideline that they used at AUA. Dr. Brown's uh, program was based at the highest level based on 2,000 hours of listening. It's like, if you do the calculation, I think it's probably 8 hours a day for 52 weeks, 5 days a week. You get 2,000 hours. Of course, that's a really intensive kind of schedule, and you might spread that over, a few years to get someone to listen for 2,000 hours. Um, but he did, in fact, have students who, accumulated that many hours listening over a period of years. And in particular, there was a case where he had some students who were able to attend school every day for 5 days a week for a year, and concentrated that 2,000 hours into a learning process. And he said that, yeah, at the end of that process, they could speak freely, they could understand, and you know, uh, actually, you know, we're on a native level. So, of course, today we don't have that luxury of being able to spend all that time consistently. Uh, yeah, but over time, you can get there, I think, if you or get partway there if you're just, dedicated and, consistent with your listening.
mhm. So you think that this roadmap that Dr. Brown presented looks realistic?
Well, not for everyone, but ultimately the idea is realistic that, after, you know, a progression of comprehensible listening and input, you're going to get better. You're going to make progress in understanding and speaking. Um, at some point, you know, you have to assume that you're going to get out into life and have to interact with people and not speak too early, but maybe try to speak past your ability. Um, yeah, it could be a little bit detrimental if you're trying to force speech or something. But yeah, I think it's, you know,
Mhm.
realistically, it's a roadmap that gives you a guide to follow.
Mhm, mhm. Okay, thank you. Well, we're using the same roadmap, by the way. If someone's interested, you can download it always under any video on the channel. It's free to download for different languages, by the way. We already have three versions of the roadmap for three categories of languages. Like if you are a native speaker of English, you are a medium, you have your medium version of the roadmap. If your native language is further from Russian, you have a different model with another timeline. And also for very close languages like Slavic languages, it takes you less time. So you can find all of them below the video. And also there was this question, are there any studies measuring the success of this method or the number of people who have benefited from it? Well, I will answer this question because I was looking for this information. Mm, like, there was no person who would make, an academic study of ALG. Like, let's check if it works or not. It never happened. There was only the experience of Dr. Brown, which is well, only Dr. Brown doing this. It took him over 10 years and 5,000 students that were in this program. Well, this already tells about something. What about the results? In David Long's interview, he said that the thing is that the students that are coming to this program, they're coming to the program and then they leave. So he can see what happens within the walls of school and he can measure this, but he cannot say what happened later because well, people are living their lives and he doesn't know what happened to them. So people who would benefit like till the end, till native like fluency, we are collecting them nowadays. Like I found Marc, I actually found Marc found me. So now we can talk about it. There is David Long, who is another example, and David Long also can tell you about other people learning in that school that he would know for years after the school, after um, learning in the school. So there are examples. It's not that they are registered or logged somewhere, unfortunately, and also it's because it was in 80s. Time has passed. No one was really, um, making notes about all the students. So this is all we have. But I think that's quite enough. It's quite enough for me. Okay, let's move forward. Let me see. Richard Levinson is asking, I'm curious about what actually took place in Marc's classroom. Mm. He spoke generally about uh, varying the topics and limited use of props and visuals. Did the teachers speak directly to the students or only to teach to each other? Did the teachers act out the speech like a soap opera or just sit, stand, and talk? Did the first days in the class look, sound, and feel like the last days? Was there a progression, planned or otherwise, in content complexity, speaking speed, or use of props and visuals? How did the teachers know when to adjust the classroom experience, assuming that the students did not speak, answer, and could not accurately assess themselves? Or was there an adjustment? Did any of this matter as long as the students kept actively listening?
Yeah, that's a lot of questions, but I'll try to answer. Um, yes,
There is a there is a continuation of this question. May I?
yeah, go ahead.
Just a little comment. I ask these questions because, like maybe others, I am uncertain how to best choose videos, talks, and podcasts by native speakers at fluency level above the 80% comprehension sweet spot for ALG. Outside of comprehensible Russian, there is a limited amount of ALG or ALG adjacent I have no idea what this means, materials available. My intuition says that active listening to native speakers' more complex speech sound patterns creates new subconscious pathways that will ultimately be utilized without conscious thought. But I am a neophyte and unsure of the path. Whew.
Mhm. Um, well, just to begin, about what took place in the classroom.
Mhm.
Uh, the teachers did, of course, speak directly to the students, and at times they would switch to speaking to each other. Uh, yeah, I guess you could say maybe in a sort of an acting out communication. Depending on what the subject matter was, and they did have kind of a structured subject matter that they or a subject matter that they followed. Um, for instance, I remember they would talk about going to the marketplace, and you know they would describe buying and selling between the vegetable seller and the person wanting to buy some oranges or a kilo of meat, and they would talk about the price, and they would say that's too much, and just acting out an experience. And then later we actually would take some field trips to places like that, like the central market, and we're able to you know uh, hear in real life what we heard in the classroom and in the presentation. So that was really helpful. And there was uh, a progression in speech complexity, I guess, if you will, but it was slow and often repetitious, just like your videos, your zero beginner or zero or one or two videos. Uh, Sometimes the subject matter was repeated a couple of times in a week, and then maybe would be revisited in the following week or weeks. Um, that's what it was like in the classroom. I they did have uh, it wasn't just free speaking and spontaneous. They did have a guide that they followed, um, and it got progressively more complex as the weeks or months went by, or the number of hours. So there was a kind of structure to the a pattern that they presented. Uh, I also remember watching, the positioning and the way their mouths would move when they were saying certain words. There were certain words and sounds in the Thai language that, didn't don't exist in the English language, and I find that similar in Russian too. There are certain sounds I hear from Russian speakers that, uh, we don't have that in English. Like particular the rolling R sound, um, and that's something that you have to listen to a lot of times before you get comfortable first with the sound, and then eventually I found there were a few words that I've said that had one of these more, pronounced sound to it. And personally, I like to watch people's mouth when they speak, and somehow that helps me, you know, later, uh, get a better understanding of the word and the flow of the language.
And to
I
speak.
don't, and to eventually speak. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay, let me see if everything was varying the topics, limited use of props and visuals. What about props and visuals? Did they use it?
Yeah, they certainly used props. They had all kinds of basic things like yeah yeah dishes and pots and pans and uh, you know a pen or a marker or a calendar or a clock. They used all those things, but only to the point where the students got an idea of what those things were, what the words were, and yeah, later they could talk about the time without pointing to the clock or without um, showing someone where the hands were on the clock. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but yes, as a kind of an introductory thing, they used a lot of different props, and they also drew on a. They had a big whiteboard, and they would draw on that. Just like you did in your videos.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was a classroom, but not in the traditional sense, of a
Mm-hmm.
classroom that we think about. You know,
The
we
classroom arranged in such a way that it would be the closest possible to real life, right?
well, I mean, it was a physical classroom, uh, but the way they presented things was, certainly different than anything in a traditional classroom.
Mm-hmm.
The students weren't copying the exercises off the board, and you know, nobody was speaking, nobody was repeating. They were only listening to the teachers. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, and somehow they were good at it. They kept it interesting. Every class was interesting. Every class, was fun, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is,
That's
that was like
important.
a really important part of the learning process, that it was fun and interesting. Uh, I can't ever remember it being boring, you know. So, when I studied things in school in the traditional methods, yeah, it was always boring. But I didn't have that experience with ALG or the natural approach. They were
Mm-hmm.
able to keep it interesting, and even today the videos I watch, even though uh, they may be basic stories, from a children's book or a fairy tale, like some that you've done. Yeah, they're not boring and they're fun. And yeah, this really helps, with, uh, being able to spend time watching and, a slow progression.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Reading Dr. Brown's autobiography, I found out his opinion on if the teacher should act out something during the class or not. And he said that actually, and I agree totally, especially, having the experience of teaching with ALG, that the best ALG teacher is not the one who acts like if it's a real life, but actually who has a talent not to act like it's real life. And because, and he had an example. There was a guy who was making photos. Like that was the game of the classroom at the moment. He took a camera and was making pictures of the students and was saying, well, could you please sit or do this or do that, pose in this or that way? And Dr. Brown wrote that he was watching him and he realized that at this moment, this teacher, he was not a teacher, he was a photographer, really.
Hmm.
like genuinely not playing a photographer, but being a photographer at that moment.
Right.
So I think that's the best point for an ALG teacher, not to think about teaching, not being a teacher. Well, I mean, if someone is interested in the other side, for the teachers, for other creators, I think that's a very important mindset, not to be a teacher, not to think about the language. I think the best videos out there are the videos shot in real life setting or real life happening, whatever you
Hmm.
do. Either it's at home or outside, but something that's really happening to you and you're just filming yourself at the same time. Those are the best videos. Um, okay. And also you said about the repetition.
Hmm.
They were repeating things. That was done on purpose, according to the program, but did it feel boring or not?
No, it didn't feel boring because, you know, I remember the first day, of the first class. It was all new students who were just starting out. It was the level one, like the introductory class, and the teachers, you know, we came in and the teachers, said some phrase and, or said a couple of phrases. And yeah, no one understood what they were saying. Everybody was looking at each other like, huh? Um, and yeah, every day we would come back that week in the class and they would repeat these phrases. And yeah, after the third day, uh, everyone clearly understood. Yeah, they were saying, good morning, you know,
Mm,
how are you today? Something like that. And so, yeah, they never explained what they were doing, but after just a couple of days of that, we understood, that they were greeting us. It was a Thai greeting,
mm,
and that really is the basis for, like was the basis for being introduced into the program. There were other things they, repeated in those early lessons. uh, maybe one teacher would start walking towards the door and the other one would say, where are you going? Right. And, you know, after that, after a couple times, we knew what the phrase, where are you going, what the words
mhm,
were. And uh, so it was like a progression of these basic things in the beginning, just to introduce us into the way the learning would work.
mhm, mhm. Okay. Just to summarize about the repetition. Um, um, so repetition happens in the classroom. Well, happened in the classroom because well, it's not boring on one hand and it's useful on the other, right?
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Okay. Because this question, a lot of people ask me, should we repeat or not? And I always say that as to any other practices, if it's a deliberate practice, and it's boring and it looks like exercising or a drill, don't do that. But
Yeah, let me
at the
just say
same,
one. I want to say one thing about
right,
repetition. Um, yeah, we're talking about two different kinds of repetition,
right.
right? It's not like the mathematic times tables where 2 + 2 = 4 and four equals 8. It's a different kind of repetition, one where you're not repeating it in your mind, you're just hearing it over and over again in a different context or um, you know over a period of time. So,
Mm,
you know, repetition in the traditional sense, yeah, it's boring and it's a struggle, but
Mhm.
repetition in comprehensible input, in you know, hearing the same words or phrases over again, yeah, it just starts to become more familiar, and eventually you understand it without any effort, because
Mhm.
that's the idea. You're not supposed to put any effort into learning through the natural approach or through ALG. And yeah, the the benefit is uh, much different than sitting there trying to memorize something the traditional way.
Mhm. Right. Just we're always comparing this method with how children learn, and children really like repetition. They always ask to repeat the same favorite fairy tale, the story.
Yeah.
They are repeating the same games with each other over and over again. So that's a way of learning as well. We actually have a saying, a proverb in Russian, "Повторение– мать учения." Repetition is the mother of learning. And do you know, did I tell you that we are implementing an instrument on our website? Not right now. It's like the next stage of development of the platform. We are implementing an instrument which will be called something like SRS or Smart Repetition. Like you can watch a video and then you can mark if you want the platform to repeat it for you in a while.
Hmm.
Like
Like in a in a
you can repeat your favorites. Just like tell me this story again, please. Mommy.
Yeah, no, that that sounds really good, because oftentimes I'm going back to the website and looking for a video that I liked, that I watched a
Mm-hmm.
couple months ago. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it takes a little bit of searching. Eventually I find it, but yeah, something like that would be really helpful.
Hmm. I hope so. Another thing that you said that you were watching the faces of the
Mhm.
teachers, and it helps a lot, both to comprehend better and to speak better later on.
Mhm.
And I agree. I totally agree. I think this is very important. And as Richard Levinson is asking, his last question was about how to choose videos, best CI videos, like outside Comprehensible Russian. If you're looking for something, how can you find it? Well, first of all, by the way, please watch my long video where I tell a lot about this, like how to choose the best CI content outside Comprehensible Russian. Like if you're looking for other creators or native content, I talk a lot about it in the video right somewhere here. Um, and that's one of the very important criterias when you're choosing a video. You need to see the speaker. Like if you're watching a video, like someone is um, shooting something like outside, but you cannot see the face, faceless
All right.
videos. I would not go for that. When you see the face, you get so much more information on like nonverbal clues of what's happening, what's being said,
Hmm.
because everything matters. The tone of voice, the facial expression, all the emotions, all the gesticulations, everything matters. The same phrase could be said in a very different way, and the meaning will be different. So very important to first to have a face in the video. Well, at least 80% of the time. Well, sometimes it's not possible to record yourself. I know, but especially in the vlogs. But it's important. And try to find someone who's naturally expressive, like an
Hmm.
expressive person who's expressing all the emotions and likes to gesticulate and so on. Because just a robot like that, blah 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 blah. Uh, like nowadays, you have so many videos with AI avatars just sitting like this and talking like that. Um, I would avoid that. Yeah. Okay, maybe let's move forward to the next question. I hope we covered this one. Whoa. Oh, wow. Um, Pomi Mayu is asking, my question would be, do you think that some languages are more suited to ALG input learning than others? I don't know much about Thai, but if it is similar to Mandarin Chinese, it makes sense that ALG would be a really good approach for a native speaker of an Indo-European language. Difficult pronunciation that must be heard from hundreds of hours to really get a handle on, and grammar based on conventions of word order rather than inflectional logic. Russian, on the other hand, while the pronunciation is far from simple, seems to be well suited to a very systematic type of learning. For example, people who enjoy memorizing tables, etc. This is not going to stop me trying acquire it all through immersion. However, I'm something like 500, 750, 100 hours into the process, and it seems like it will be a really long time before case inflections will come naturally to me, even in some quite basic sentences. Patience and enjoying the process are key. So the question is, do you think that some languages are more suited to LG input learning than others?
Yeah, I have an opinion on that.
Mhm.
I think that I don't think any language is more suited to learning through the ALG method. I think, they're all the same based on, the quality and the yeah, the clarity of the input, right? So if you have clear input, clear comprehensible input, um, I don't think any language would be apart uh, from another, in that way. Now, I tried to, yeah, I tried a little experiment recently because I really just have been reintroduced to ALG. My Thai language experience was a long time ago, and then I had a long period where uh, I didn't have, yeah, I didn't follow any comprehensible input. I didn't really have a desire to learn another language. And then, of course, I started with Russian, about a year ago or a year and a half ago. Um, and yeah, recently I decided to, yeah, just check it out and start listening to another language. And not with the goal of really learning it, but just seeing if it worked.
Uh,
And
which which language?
German.
Ah, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay,
So one of our classmates, you know her, Daniela, German
right.
Moments. Yeah, I found out that she, in fact, was, presenting comprehensible input on her channel. And so I went there and started listening to Daniela's, uh, and I knew zero German, uh, and, you know, but I tried it, and
Mhm.
yeah, I gave it maybe like 10 hours. And sure enough, uh, I learned things, and I learned the to to be familiar and understand things she was saying, just like I did with Russian or with Thai. So, yeah, that's my basis for yeah, my statement that I don't think it matters what language it is. If if it's comprehensible input and you spend the time to listen, and in the beginning there's some repetition, yeah, you're gonna be able to understand and gain that knowledge.
I think if we are basing on on the strategy that we are mimicking the way the children learn their first language, then, mm, well, all around the globe, kids learn their native language in the same amount of time, no matter the language, no matter if it has a complex grammar, if it's a tone language, whatever that means. I mean, I'm not a linguist, but all this linguistic description of different languages, it's only our ideas and models. And apparently, for the natural process, it doesn't really matter all those
Mm-mm.
differences. It looks like we don't have any cases where it would matter. We only have our timeline roadmap, which is basing on some equation. We're not going to talk about it right now. And of course, there are factors that influence how fast we progress as adults, of how much time we put into that, of how comprehensible the input is, how far your native language is from the language, that your target language, and not only your native language, but also your cultural background, because the kid is blank. It just absorbs. An adult has some background, like the native language and the culture. And of course, like if may I make a comparison, like between two pairs of languages. Let's say you are an Armenian learning Russian or a Vietnamese learning Russian. Linguistically, Armenian language and Vietnamese language are super far from Russian.
Mm-hmm.
They almost don't have anything in common. But Armenians are our neighbors. We have been living in the same country for 70 years. We are both Orthodox Christian societies, uh, and we have so many connections in history. So when an Armenian would watch some content in Russian, let's assume this Armenian doesn't know any Russian at all from the beginning, he will understand much more than a Vietnamese, because a
Mm-hmm.
Vietnamese would ask himself, what is what is happening at all? What are these people doing? Because there are so many things, culture, history, um, I don't know, traditions, mindset, philosophical ideas, religious ideas, like lifestyle, humor, so many things.
I guess maybe you could call them clues.
Yes, 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 yes,
Yes.
yes, exactly. So an Armenian would have plenty of clues, and a Vietnamese would be totally lost. So of course it would take a Vietnamese um, more time. Um, but it doesn't mean that ALG works for some languages and doesn't work for other languages. It works for all the languages. Just your timeline can vary a little bit.
Yeah. When on this subject, I was lucky, I think, to uh, remember my first meeting with Dr. Brown, and he was trying to, yeah, explain the concept of what we call the natural approach, ALG. And he said to me that uh, yeah, he posed a question. Uh, he said that he would, look at a child, a Thai child, and he thought, you know, why can that child speak perfectly? And why can all children speak their native languages perfectly? And, they don't make mistakes. They don't have to think about it. They're just able to speak and understand everything perfectly. It was kind of like the basis for kind of solidifying the concept, on the most basic
Mhm.
level. And so I always thought about that when he said, why can this child always speak perfectly? And it's because of the way he learned. And that was really uh, a moment when, yeah, something I could understand about the concept, and it is very basic. It's a basic premise, but once you believe that and understand and believe it, yeah, the rest of it's somehow easier,
Mhm.
uh, as opposed to traditional learning methods.
Dr. Brown's answer to his own question later was, well, this is an approximate quote. It's not that adults lose the talent to learn a language naturally. It's actually that adults acquire some habits that get in the way of this natural acquisition.
Yeah.
Because we are rationalizing too much, we want to control everything too much, uh, we want to learn grammar and make exercises and put our little done, 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 done. This chapter is done. Final word?
Um, yeah, no, I really appreciate the conversation and ALG, comprehensible input. It's something that really personally made a difference to me. I really like the idea of learning a language and especially learning it correctly, where I can communicate and people understand what I'm saying or I understand what they're saying. So I don't have too many hobbies, but I would say
Hmm.
this is a good one for me. Thank
Thank,
you.
thanks again for this conversation. Maybe see you next time.
Yeah, I hope so.
Bye bye.
Bye.